Hey everybody, it's Ela and I'm going to show you how to create interesting textures in your painting. And so my subject today is this lemon. I've already drawn the lemons ahead of time with a pen. I like this pen. This is Micron PN by Sakura, and it's waterproof. And it means I'll really be able to see that line. I like seeing the line in my paintings. So I have several different methods that I'm going to use. I have the sponge that I just got wet, and I squeeze it out so it's just slightly damp. I have salt here. It's just regular Morton's table salt. So I've got that little bit of water there. I have a candle, and I can also just use the side of my brush. So the technique that takes the longest, let me move this here. The technique that takes the most time to really look cool and show up is the salt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, and here's my yellow that I've already picked out. And you know, if you don't know what yellow to use, it's very important to swatch your colors. So I'm going to swatch over here on the side of my picture. Just going to see what that looks like. That looks pretty good. That's very lemony. So it's good to try out your colors beforehand and just make sure that that's what you want. So I've got my color, I've got my lemon. I'm going pretty strong. I talk about different strengths of paint as being like either tea or coffee or milk or cream if it's very, very concentrated. And I'm going to say this is kind of coffee strength. We want it to really show up on the paper. Otherwise, you won't be able to see the texture that I'm creating. You need that contrast between the yellow and the background. And yellow is a very light color, so it's good to have a fairly concentrated yellow. So immediately, I'm not waiting. I'm not hanging around. I'm taking the tiniest bit of salt. That's too much. I should literally be able to count the grains, like just barely what will balance on my finger and thumb. That's enough. Really just a ridiculously small amount. I could probably do a tiny bit more, but I'm just going to stop with that because what I find is that students tend to dump a bunch of salt on there and then they say it doesn't work. And it's like, because you dumped a bunch of, we're not seasoning our food. Every single grain of salt is going to dissolve and push away the paint. So you need the paint to be very wet. You need the paint to be fairly concentrated, not opaque. You still want to see the color of the white the paper shining through, but each one of these little granules is going to dissolve and create an effect. So that's number one, and it takes a few minutes. So hopefully by the time I finish my fourth one, this will finally have done something. So my second one I'm going to do is, this is a tricky one. The last two are going to be easier, but I'm going to do the tricky one because all I need is my brush to do this technique. So I have my brush and I can practice. Once again, it's great to practice on the side. See, my brush is too wet. I'm dipping my brush back in the paint. I want the paint to be fairly concentrated, but I don't want my brush to be too wet. So lots of pigment, not a lot of water. My brush is dipped in water before I do anything, of course, but I can control how wet my brush is. So let me try it again on the side here. That's good. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm laying my brush flat, parallel, horizontal to the paper, and pulling it along the surface. And I know this is very pale, but you can see how the brush is just picking up the very tops of those peaks on this textured paper. This will only work on paper that has texture. If you do this with really smooth paper, nothing will happen, or not much will happen. It relies on the texture of the paper. So we're just catching that little bit of texture of the paper with the side of the brush. And once I've got the part that I like, go ahead and color it in like I'm doing right now. And I can decide how, do I want to spread it around some more? You can kind of mess with it a little bit. You have a window, a fairly narrow window to mess with it some more. I'm using Fabriano Artistico paper. It's 100% cotton. It's cold press, so it's really good quality paper, so it's going to do all these tricks really well. If I had a wood pulp paper, I wouldn't be able to rely on it to do these tricks. So paper is important for these techniques. So, okay, that looks cool. That's done. I've got that texture on the lemon. Okay, what's my third one? I think I'm going to do the sponge. So this is an ordinary kitchen sponge, and I cut it up, and you can see those holes and texture there. So I'm just going to put fairly thick paint. I can try and rub this around in the paint palette, but I can also just paint on it with my brush. And once again, I want a lot of pigment. We want to be sort of damp, but not dripping wet. Just sort of damp, and I can just, is it working? Yes, I can see it's working here. I could have used a bigger area to test it out, but here we go. I'm pressing it down, and you can see it's creating a texture. It's pretty cool. There it is. And just like with the side of the brush, I'm going to get a little bit more water in my yellow here, and I can paint around it and choose how much of that texture do I want to keep and how much of it do I want to be solid yellow. And I'm not dilly-dallying. I don't get up and use the restroom. This is something I want to decide and do quickly. If I want to try doing the side of the brush a little bit again, I can combine techniques. You know, if I want it to be a little bit darker on the edges. So there's room to play and get what you like. And then I stop. I don't want to mess with it too long. Otherwise, you know, you can get a back run or do something that you don't like. So here's my fourth and last option that I'm showing. And there's other techniques, but these are the ones I'm showing you today. I have a regular paraffin candle. You could also do this with a crayon or a beeswax candle. But the main thing is I need to be able to, once again, have a paper that is 100% cotton and cold press, so it has that texture. It's a rather kind of firm surface that will take the wax when I rub it onto the candle. And I want to hold the candle really flat, and it's just going to get picked up by the peaks of the paper. Just those little high parts on that texture. So I don't know exactly what this will look like until I put the paint on. So I'm going to find out now. It's going to be a little bit of a surprise. You can see how it's resisting. I've got a little bit of a line up there. Sometimes you get unexpected lines. But it's cool looking. And if you lie it really flat, sometimes you can get this nice speckly quality that I think I've done a pretty good job with. All right. So that's all 4 of them. Still haven't had much reaction with the salt yet. Just the tiniest bit, unfortunately. But try this out on your own. This technique, especially with the salt, will work better with a more intensely colored paint. You know, something that's darker, like a blue or a red or a brown. But anyway, there it is. Those are my 4 different options, and I hope you try these out. Don't just watch the video, try it out, and have fun with it, and see how else you want to apply these techniques with other projects that you want to do. All right, enjoy.